Hi all. So, one thing that you find you have to do sometimes is you have to remove firewalls from Panorama, and I'm going to do a quick video on this because I think it's something that's important to understand. If you're migrating from one Panorama to another one, you're going to have to localize the config on the first Panorama on the firewall, and then move it across and import it to the next one. There are several ways of doing this. You can do a load partial if you want to put only certain parts of the configuration into a new Panorama, or you can just export it across as we're going to do today, just as it is, and bring it in as it is, and then you can work out your templates and your template stacks afterwards. Okay, so this is going to be the one that we're going to be using, that we're going to be removing, sorry. So currently we can see 93, we can see it's connected and it's in sync. Starting from 10.1, we need the auth key, so we're going to generate the auth key on Panorama, and that's done down here in Panorama device registration auth key, and we're going to generate an auth key now. Okay. Can be anything. I would suggest giving it more than 1 minute of validity though. Just to quickly go through this, so you've got a lifetime. This is the lifetime of the key. Got a count, so the amount of devices that you can do. So you can say 1 device, 100 devices, 1,000 devices, or whatever you want to put in there, and what the device type is. Any firewall or log collector. I personally have always just used any. I'm not aware of any reason why you would necessarily need to go firewall or log collector. But I'm sure there probably is one. Okay, so the next thing it wants out of us is it wants the serial number. It wants a serial number of the firewall you're generating the authentication key for. So we're going to pop that in there. And then we're going to copy the auth key to the clipboard. And then we're going to close. We don't need to do a commit on this, as you say. See, now commit doesn't illuminate or anything like that. So that's all good from our point of view. So now we're going to actually remove the firewall from management to Panorama by localizing the configuration on the firewall. Okay, so that's done in device and setup, and then in management. And then we're going to look at the Panorama servers in a second when it finally gets its head together. Okay, and then in here we're going to put the auth key in. Once we put the auth key in, then we're all good to go. We can do whatever we want to do, and we're going to override that. We're going to take that out of it. And also down here as well, we're going to disable the Panorama policy objects, and disable device and network templates. As you'll see when you do it, as a warning comes up, disabling the Panorama policy objects, remove Panorama policies, and then it will make them local. Then by default it removes the Panorama objects. In this particular instance, what we want to do is we want to take firewall PAVM from here, which is on this Panorama, and then we want to move it to another Panorama. So what we need to do, because we're dealing with production firewalls in this particular example, is we need to bring that firewall in, and we need it to have all the objects and all the templates and everything that it has currently. So if we do that, import the Panorama policy and objects for disabling, then that will make the policy and objects local to the device. We'll do the same for the device and network templates. Okay, click OK. Then we're going to commit there. It's got to be a full commit. So we're going to commit that now, and then what that will do is that will make this firewall a local firewall again. Obviously, once this is done, we're going to need to do some clearing up on the Panorama, because now that we've removed the firewall and we've made this firewall local, we're going to want to remove the configuration, the device group, and the templates from the Panorama. And there is actually a way, a sequence which that can be done, which is going to give you less stress and less hassle. So once this is committed, we'll go on to do that step. Okay, so that's now committed. So we can just click through that, and now in this firewall, as you can see now, we've removed all the telltale little green cog icons. You always get it on the authentication setting ones. I'm not entirely sure why this is, but they're now all gone. So this firewall now is locally managed. All the objects and everything that were passed down to it, all the rules, all the policies that were passed down to it from Panorama are now local on the box. So on Panorama, we want to clear it up. So in Panorama, really, we want to do this the right way round so that we don't end up hitting loads of commit errors. So what I'd be tempted to do is, if I want to retain my custom device group that I've got, is just remove the firewall from that device group. That way we've not got a device group to worry about, we've just got a firewall that has no device group. If we look in summary, we can now see that there is PAVM, which is in the no device group assigned. If, however, this was in its own device group, it was its own device group, which you see in some instances where you have to have very granular policies, you could delete the device group as well. But essentially, that firewall's now gone from that group, so it's not tied to a device group. So if I go to here and I search for PAVM, that makes sure that I get my firewall that I've got. Now, if we try and remove the template, it will throw its toys out the cot, because it's going to say it's part of the template stack and thus it's referenced, so it can't be removed. So we're going to remove the template stack first. Then we can remove the template. And then if we go to the summary again now, we can now remove this from the configuration. We're stuck with my old test VM1 there that's neither here nor there. So now we're going to commit that to Panorama. And once that's committed to Panorama, then we've removed the firewall from Panorama, we've removed it, it's localized the configuration. There's been no change to the data plane. Basically, whilst doing this, you may see a blip, depending on the size of the policy. You may see a blip where you're writing the entire candidate config to the running config. You're more likely to see that apparently going the other way, so coming from standalone into being managed into Panorama. But essentially, this is now a standalone firewall. So this standalone firewall now, you can write the policies for it, and this firewall now is ready then to be brought into another Panorama if you wanted to migrate it to another Panorama. And that's it. That's it for this short video on removing a firewall from Panorama. Okay, so counter to the previous video on removing a firewall from Panorama, what we're going to do now is we're going to take that same firewall that we localized and we're going to bring it back into Panorama. So this would simulate if you were moving from one Panorama to another for a customer or for yourself. You would localize the configuration on that firewall, and then move the Panorama IPs to the new ones, and then push it out and then import it into the next firewall. Now, I say there are several ways of getting more granular with this, but this is in my opinion, only my opinion, this is one of the quickest, certainly the quickest, the easiest, and the less, you've got a smaller scope for issues doing it this way. Okay, so back on our Panorama, it's the same PAVM on 93 that we had before. So back on our Panorama, what we now want to do is we're going to go to summary, and well, there's two ways of doing it. So we can go to summary, and this is important thing as well, is I don't know, if you had a few firewalls to do, you could probably do it this way. If you had lots and lots of firewalls to do, then you could probably do it the other way. But either way, the result is the same. So if I want to add a firewall here, I can add the serial number, I can generate the authentication key here, and that authentication key is good for that firewall exactly the same as previously. So even if I did it down here, we have the same outcome of the two. So we have the authentication key, and then that allows us to onboard our firewall or do anything with the firewall that's regarding the Panorama configuration for that matter. This also supports as well, so if we come back up to summary, this also supports multiple serial numbers. So you could add multiple serial numbers to here, and then you could bring in all the devices as you want. Okay, so I'm going to do it this way for now because the other way last time. So I get the serial number again. Okay, I'm going to put it in there. And we don't want to associate these devices. So if you associate the device, when you bring the firewall in, you'll import it into a certain device group. That may or may not be what you want to do, depending on where it's come from. If you want to replace like for like, I guess there would be benefits to that. But I like to have control of it once I've got the firewall into Panorama. I'm going to generate the auth key. I'm going to copy the auth key because it doesn't, well, it gives you the thing there. Okay, and click OK. Now, because we've added it this way, one of the differences I now have to do a commit. So I now have to commit that to Panorama so that it's there. So it's kind of all in one step. Okay, and that's now committed. So we're going to click close and we can see that we're showing as disconnected. Okay, so I can come back to my firewall here now. Go to device. And this is another important step as well, and something that's actually did catch me out a few times. I'm not saying I'm love me, I'm thick, but it did catch me out a few times. So I'm going to put our IP address in here, which is that one as far as I can remember, and I'm going to put my auth code in there. And that's all good. But if I was to click OK now, Panorama policy and objects and device and network templates are still disabled and we can see this because in the bottom we've got the option to enable them. If we leave them disabled, we won't be able to push those objects to it because they're disabled. So we have to enable Panorama and policy objects and enable device and network template, and that way we have the auth code, the auth key, sorry, we have the IP address. The secondary box there is if you had a secondary Panorama in a HA configuration, and that way now it'll accept the objects, it'll accept the device and network template, and we can carry on. Okay, so a couple of things to check as well is when you're doing this. So if you end up in a situation where you have service routes and things like this, you're going to have to check where your service routes are, really. If you're using management interface for all, then okay, so you know that this Panorama must be reachable from the ETH0 interface. I personally have deployed in certain cloud providers where they retain the ETH0 interface, and so you'd have service routes. In the event where you have a service route, the interface that you intend to connect the firewall to Panorama from needs to be able to reach it. That makes sense. So for Panorama pushed updates and Panorama, you would select those and select the service route that you've got, and then it will give you, but I haven't got any interfaces on this device, but you'll have the interfaces there, and then it will give you, if there's multiple IP addresses on those interfaces, then there'll be another drop down. If not, it will give you the main IP. Quick note about service route configurations is you can do them for IPv6 as well, and you can have destination service route configurations as well, where you can add FQDNs, IP addresses, and then tell it where you want that to be sent as well, or sourced from, I should say, not sent. Of course, the default position is to use management interface for all, as we know. So if it's set on that and you know the management interface can reach the Panorama, which in my case it can, then this is all good. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to commit this. Okay, yeah, there we go. Okay, so that's now committed, so as long as everything's okay, and we shall see, we should now see in here that it will connect. It's connected to Panorama. Now at this point it is actually connected. Setup, and then operations, and then we're going to import the device configuration to Panorama. And we have options with a firewall master key. This is where you have a different master key for different devices. These are currently all running on the same master key, the default master key. So we're going to import PAVM. So when it imports, it will import and it will give it a template name of PAVM, and it'll give it a device group name of PAVM, and that's based on the fact that it's just auto-populated that. So this is actually test 03, this firewall, I believe. Don't ask me why. Or is it test 02? No, it's test 02. That's test 02. So we're going to import it as that. So when we'll see the template, and the device group will be created with those names, and there'll be a template stack created as well for this device, which will be the PAVM test 02, and there'll be a STK at the end of it. So then we come down to the import devices, shared objects into Panorama, shared context. So in this option, it's really kind of what's best for your own environment. So if we go to import devices, shared objects into Panorama, shared context, it will attempt to bring in everything that comes in with this firewall into the shared. So that would then be available and would have to be pushed to all other firewalls that are managed by Panorama. If we don't do that, it will by default bring in all the objects, and it will come into this device group here. Okay, so we're not going to do that because there's implications about that. Previously, yeah, the idea was you bring it into shared. Personally, myself, I would like to move whatever I want into shared, because when you're talking about a huge estate, you can end up with capacity issues on smaller firewalls. If you're bringing in like big firewalls with lots of objects and they all go into shared, you've got to think that everything that's in shared then needs to be pushed out. There is another option on the other side of that as well. And I'll do that. So if we say import devices, shared objects into Panorama's shared context, where there's a address 1, for instance, as an object name, and it's got an address, where that exists in shared objects, and there's an address 1 with a different IP address that's in what's imported, that will be imported into the device group. It won't overwrite what's in shared. Okay, so I'm gonna retick that, and we're gonna bring it in, and then we got a choice of where we're gonna import the rules. So the rules that come in with this device, not the default rules, because the default rules are handled separately. It's either in the pre-rule base or the post-rule base. That again depends on how you want to write policy. Anything that's in pre-rule base, the only way you can supersede that is through shared policies. On the device itself, you couldn't put anything to subvert those rules. You couldn't get around those rules by putting local rules in. Post rule based, then you can put rules in underneath. So, but bear in mind as well that once you've got the firewall into Panorama, you can move the rules to where you want them to. So we're going to go for pre-rule base. Okay, it says it's imported it and it's completed and it's successful. So if we now go to policies, well actually let's go to device groups first, and we'll see that within the device group here now we have PAVM test 02, which is our device group that we created, and PAVM is the device that's in it. We know that's our firewall, and if we look in there we can see that its parent device group is shared, so it's not a nested group, it is just under shared. And then we have reference templates, and we have the user ID master device and where it's going to get its user ID from. Where Panorama references to get the user ID information for this device group. Okay, so if we go to templates, we can see in templates now that we have this in, because I've still got the filtering from the previous video. So we've got PAVM test 02 stack, which is the stack. So previously, if you looked in the last video, there was several templates in that stack. They are now combined into a single template, and then we have the template stack to edit as we want to. And so those are in, so we can change them. So if we go to policies, we can see within policies we now have our device groups, PAVM test 02. There's no NAT rules, so that's, yep. And then there's our rule that we had on the firewall, and then in the default rules will be the same. but if we wanted to, so if we look at the default rules in here, okay, there's no logging on them. So let's say we wanted to log on those rules. We could override them here within this group now. We're going to log at session end, and then we're going to override the other one and log at session end. And you can see now that has provided us now with the two icons. So we're going to log at session end, which don't currently exist on our firewall as is. Okay, but we're editing that in this group. Now, so look at our pre-rules. So we've got inside out. Really, realistically speaking, a generic rule like this, you'd want at the bottom. You certainly wouldn't want it in your pre-rules. Well, we can move that from here as well. So we can get that and we can move it to a different rule base or device group. And then from here we can see the rule we've selected, or rules we've selected, and where we want to send it to. So do we want to send it to shared? Do we want to send it to a different device group? Well, we want to keep it in our same device group, okay? And we want to move it to the post rule base, which is automatically selected because we're currently looking at the pre-rule base, and then the rule order. So we can either go to the top, move it to the bottom, or before rule or after rule if there's existing rules. So if we're going to go before rule, then it's going to ask us for a rule name. We don't have any rules in post rules at the minute. And again, likewise for after rule. So I'm going to say I want to move it to the bottom because I want this to be a catch-all rule as we're migrating some firewalls. An error out on the first detection invalidation, I'd always leave that ticked because I want to know if there's going to be any errors. Okay, so I do that. And checking post rules, and then there's my rule there. And then if we just refresh the screen rather than doing that previously, we'd have seen that it had disappeared from here. So now in there I've got my my catch-all rule that's going to be my post rules. I've changed the login on the default rules, which isn't best practice, by the way. The best practice is to create rules above these that do the same thing. These are pretty much designed for the security when you first fire the box up. So connectivity that you want to get to the device is allowed because it's got intra-zone default, so anything going like inside to inside is allowed. Inter-zone is denied by default. But we've done that, and now what we want to do is we want to commit that to Panorama. So now Panorama has that configuration for that device group, including that device stored, and then that's I suppose a live configuration, you could say, on Panorama. Okay, that's committed. But we'll do in a second. Okay, now it's committed. That's fine. So now we have it committed to Panorama, and we have our firewall that still looks the same, because as far as firewall is concerned, from any plane, it's not, you said nothing pushed back to it. As far as it's concerned, it's still exactly the same as it was. So now, because I want to push that back, and I want to bring that firewall now, in my opinion, completely under my control, I'm going to export or push the device config bundle. Again, I've got the firewall master key option, but we haven't got that, so we're going to push it to PAVM, and then we'd like to export or push the and commit the config bundle to PAVM. So if we export it, it's just going to send it. If we push and commit, then it's going to push the config and it's going to commit it, overwriting the config on the box. As it does this, as you'll notice, it says a device state was saved in the device. So this is in case of any kind of recovery. If this then breaks the device, you know that you have a device state saved before anything was sent back to it. That's the unedited configuration of the device. Okay, so the commit was triggered on the device. So as you know, because this is an export, push and commit, and then we can see the commit there, and that it was started by Panorama, and it was started at this time. So we know that the commit's going to go on the box. Okay, so that commit is now completed on the firewall. So this is all good. So we just refresh this. And now we can see the telltale sign that that's now in orange. And we can also see that we've got the login at session end. If we look at the network and interfaces, we can see they're still the same. Because at this stage now, we've just pushed the device bundle back, so all the object UUIDs and everything have been panoramaized, so as to speak. So now what's left to do is to push back the push the devices from here. So this is then to push the policy from here to overwrite the policy with whatever you want on the device. So if we come back here and we have a look, so we've got a login banner mode 44 new banner, which is left over from a video previously. So we're going to go to so you can edit. So back in the day, you was always taught to edit the template, sorry, and push the stack. Well, you can now edit the stack, but it comes up as an override because effectively what you're doing is you are overriding the template value. So if I try and override something there, if I try and create something here, so that's what it is. If I want to then edit that, I want to give it a new banner, then it comes up as being an override, and it's been overridden from the, if we go to here, so we can see we've got new banner, new, and then it will say that it's overridden because it's overridden from the template and overridden in the stack. Again, it's a personal preference as far as I'm concerned, because didn't mean to do that. It's a personal preference because you may be happy with all that, but you've got to understand that the more complex these overrides get, the more you're going to have to work out where you need to make sure that policy is when you go to alter it anywhere, because if it's overridden locally on the box, and the local configuration is what is going to take precedence, so you need to keep track of that, in my opinion. So I try and keep my overrides as little as I can. So if I'm just going to pull that one there, then that should go back to, still claim it's been overridden. Is that because I put a space in it? Or no, it's because I need to click there, and then that reverts it to its original configuration, which is the same as the revert button you get at the bottom. So if I want to edit this now in the actual template itself, I'm going to go to my test02 template, and we're going to change that banner. So template demo, I'm going to give it a domain of mode 44.local. Okay, so now if I commit this now, so I'm going to commit this to Panorama just so that it's committed, so that we know that we've got the configuration on here, and this is now a valid configuration on Panorama. If we go to Panorama and the devices, we'll see that everything on it is still out of sync, and that's because we haven't pushed this to it and it hasn't had the version number come back. Part of the configuration file is the configuration version, and Panorama can read this to see what version it is compared to the version that it's got. Okay, so we're just checking tasks. Okay, we see that commit is nearly done. Okay, it's completed. So now we're going to push it back to the device. So we're going to push the device, and in here we have everything that we need to know about what's actually going to be pushed, what it's going to be pushed to, and what entities it's going to be pushed to. So immediately, this shows you the flexibility of this as well. So immediately I know that test VM1, this one here, that it wants to push to because it's out of sync, I know it's disconnected. So what I can do is I can remove it either from the custom device group, so there'll be no commit attempted to it. Or I could leave the commit to the custom device group, and I could remove that if there was the option to do that. So if there was something that needs to be pushed to custom device group, I could just remove that entity from it. But currently what I want to do is I want to push to the PA VM test 02 because I know that's out of sync. I can preview the changes if I want. And then I've got the template, which we know is out of sync as well. Now, if I just push this to it, the result of that would be that the banner that is on here wouldn't change. If I force template values, then I'm forcing the overwriting of that value with the template values, as would make sense. And this is something I like to do initially, and I think it's the best thing to do. I think it's best practice to do it initially, because that way you know that what is in the template on here is what's on your firewall. Got to think what we're trying to do, in my opinion, within security is we're trying to remove any ambiguity. Ambiguity or inconsistency is it does provide the holes that then attackers come through, because where you have gaps in your security, where you have something that you don't quite know about, if you don't know about it, you can't do anything about it. And that's where, you know, somebody will sit there just probing, and they will find it and, you know, potentially compromise your environment. So I'm going to push that back. I'm going to force template values, and we'll come. And that's completed, and we can see if we go through again. So it's committed to the device groups, it's committed to the template stack, and you can come in and you can just see the progress of it. You can see what's succeeded, what's not, and then you can look at the commit succeed message from the device, and that's done. So now if we come to here, now we can reload this. We can see that everything now is coming from that template, and it will say from template stack. Okay, and we've also got our mode 44 local domain. Our host name is populated by the device, obviously. And we have certain other configurations as well that we know are from Panorama. So I now just refresh that. They come up as being in sync, and they've got the same version number, 266. And there's still changes to push, as we'll see, which will be the test VM, but we're not going to do that because we know that we don't have to, because it's not connected, so there's no point. And so that's it. That's really those two videos combined, localizing the firewall from Panorama and then migrating it to another Panorama. You have to bear in mind that there are many ways to do things, and that's not necessarily the only way. It is the way I would do it, and that's sort of what I would do. I mean, with respect to that, then once you're within here and you've got templates, and if you want to put other templates in your template stack, you can do. Just remember that it inherits upwards. So if you had a template in here, so you see it's global template, and we go up, then you would have to check those two templates to make sure that actually the configuration you was after existed, because there is that thing of where there is a value defined here, and here the value will the object will remain, so the configuration item will remain, but the value will be taken from here. So there's a lot of scope to screw up with, but anything that is flexible, there's a lot of scope to screw up, because that's just how things are. Okay, so that's it for now, and I will catch you all soon.